And please tell us where you are, Gregory, and how's the weather where you are?
Just like you have in London, one is in Brussels, exactly the same thing.
Okay, lovely, lovely. I know you're not far from us, so obviously the weather doesn't have to be too different from us. So yes, so
Yeah.
welcome to the show. So
Thanks.
yes, dear listeners, yes, just to remind you, the aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abrushin. And we have a new topic every week. The topic for tonight is do not fall in temptation. You're welcome to join us with any question or comments. The number to contact us on our UK number, it is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. I'm going to begin with what is the Grail message? The Grail message in the light of truth by Abrushin is a spiritual knowledge of life. It offers an explanation of the world, a picture of creation on the basis of natural laws. Its lectures contain valuable basic elements as a help in life. For through the knowledge mediated, the readers again brought closer to life and led back to God. The Grail message deals with important fundamental questions of life by explaining in a clear and logical way the automatic working of the laws of nature, the whole weaving of creation, allowing every process to be recognized and thereby the purpose of our whole life. It is directed at the individual and speaks to the innate experiences of the human being, their strengths and weaknesses. Thus, every reader has the opportunity to discover through the intuitive perception if what is stated is the truth. Combining with matter-of-fact reasoning, a complete world picture arises, where there is no separation between the visible world and the great world beyond the five senses, nor any separation between scientific and religious striving for knowledge. I'd like to give you a couple of quotes from the author of the Grail message, Abrushin. The hearer and reader of my lectures should always work within himself, keenly probing and building bridges from one lecture to the other, as well as out into the great and small world happenings. Only then will he be able to understand the Grail message and find that it gradually shapes itself into one complete whole, without leaving any gaps. Again and again, in all the happenings, the reader will come back to the basic features. He can explain everything without having to change even one single sentence. The word of the Grail message lives, so that it permits only those people who really carry the honest desire in their souls to find abundantly. All else is automatically rejected by it. For the arrogant and those who seek superficially, the message will remain the book with 7 seals. I'd like to give you one more quote from the author. I wish to fill the gaps which have so far always remained unanswered in the souls of men, and which never leave any serious thinker in peace, if he earnestly seeks for the truth. So, dear listeners, just to remind you again, the topic for tonight, for discussion tonight, is do not fall in temptation. And that is a saying from Jesus. I will refer to it a bit more detail in a moment. So you're welcome to join us to discuss that topic tonight. Do not fall in temptation. You can contact us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. Gregory, as you know, I like to do a bit of research on the title of the topic, and look in the dictionary and see what it says there. And so the title tonight is "Do Not Fall in Temptation." So the key word is temptation there, and I checked that in the dictionary, and that says the meaning that I found: the desire to do something, especially something wrong or unwise. So temptation in the dictionary says the desire to do something, especially something wrong or unwise. And another, that was a verb, sorry, that's noun. And then as a verb, it says a thing that attracts, not really a verb, it's also a noun, a thing that attracts or tempts someone. So Gregory, again, I know the dictionary may not be very comprehensive, but I just want to get an idea if that has that meaning that I've just referred to is gives us some understanding.
Well, again, like we mentioned before, the dictionary describes, sometimes is unable to give a more precise, intuitive meaning for whatever words or actions or activities that are discussed. Only that which gives a more precise, intuitive meaning is the one to be utilized, else the meaning will be distorted. One may refer to the dictionary meaning like you just discussed, and you mentioned something which is wrong. How would you know that something is wrong if you yourself have not intuitively examined it? So you find that such definitions or descriptions given by dictionaries, they are cyclic. So the precision is absent. However, one may refer to temptation as an activity to entice someone with evil intent. Ones who have evil intent inside as the driving force, then one may refer to it as temptation. If there is no evil intent in that activity, one cannot refer to it as temptation. For instance, when you go to school to learn and you are confronted with activity which is to help you to improve the language which you are speaking, no evil intent is associated with that, so one would not say it's a temptation.
Thank you for that, Gregory. I want to explore that further, but I just want to give the context of tonight's topic from the Bible, where the reference is made, where Jesus, this quote that we are using tonight, "Do not fall in temptation," comes from. So this is, I'm going to read something to give the story where this quote is coming from. And this is from Matthew chapter 26, verse 36 to 42. I'm going to read to give the context of this. And this is titled Jesus Prays in Gethsemane. So I'm going to give the context here. So then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to them, "Sit here while I go there and pray." He took with him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee. Grief and anguish came over him, and he said to them, "The sorrow in my heart is so great that it almost crushes me. Stay here and keep watch with me." He went a little farther on, threw himself face downwards on the ground, and prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, take this cup of suffering from me. Yet not what I want, but what you want." Then he returned to the 3 disciples and found them asleep. And he said to Peter, "How is it that you 3 were not able to keep watch with me, even for 1 hour? Keep watch and pray that you will not fall into temptation. It is willing, but the flesh is weak." Once more, Jesus went away and prayed, "My Father, if this cup of suffering cannot be taken away unless I drink it, your will be done." He returned once more and found the disciples asleep. They could not keep their eyes open. I'm going to stop there. That's verse 43. So that was a reading from the Bible, from Matthew chapter 26, from verse 36 to verse 43. Gregory, there Jesus talks to his disciples to say, watch. I will just repeat the whole phrase. Actually, it says, keep watch and pray that you will not fall into temptation. Spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. So there's quite a lot there, Gregory. I know, Gregory, you mentioned earlier that temptation is with an evil intent. And yet here, the 3 disciples who fell asleep, I wouldn't say that they were having evil intent, but they were, and they couldn't even stay awake for 1 hour. So there is something not right. I can see that. So is there also another aspect of temptation, Gregory, not only with evil intent, but maybe a weakness? Because Jesus did say the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. So is there another aspect of temptation?
Before one goes into, one expands that, which you just read, which is towards the end of the earth life of Jesus. Much, much earlier, he had given them the Lord's Prayer. And towards the end of it, it was said, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Those 2 phrases, expressions are connected. Knowing full well that evil is very connected with temptation. It is such that at that particular point, the person who is undergoing these experiences is unable to decide. Unable to decide because he himself has not come to clarity on what is happening at that particular moment. And the pressure of experiencing is so much that unless initially one had prepared oneself thoroughly, you will find that you are unable to come to terms, to come to terms with what is happening at that particular moment. So it calls for vigilance. Vigilance, which means to be intuitively watchful. To be watchful regarding all the impression that assail us at that particular moment. So, on the one hand is watchfulness, and then again it talks of praying. Watchfulness to be able to determine that which is beneficial, which comes from on high, and having determined that which comes from on high because of one's good volition, to make use of that power which has been passed on at that particular moment to the individuals, to make use of it in the right sense, in accordance with the laws of creation, in accordance with the pointers, the laws pointing to how this thing should be used. That is prayer. So you find that, when one is referring to vigilance, vigilance alone calls for using all the powers which is available to you to be able to detect all waves passing through you, and at the same time making use of your good volition to apply these waves of power in accordance with the laws of creation. In that sense, temptation will not be able to overcome you.
Thank you, Gregory, for that explanation. It definitely clarifies, how we should look at the situation here, or what is temptation, how it works, and how we can be watchful, like you say. So yes, there's a lot to take in actually. How to be this way, to be aware of the temptation, to be watchful for it.
And if I may add,
yes,
that not being attentive enough, not being watchful enough, that will give room for the sneaking darkness or for the sneaking evil to manifest. So in the case of the disciples who were supposed to be on the alert and to be watchful, they went to sleep. So anything which is of evil can come near and manifest itself. Whereas if they had been on the alert at that moment, when their Lord went forth to pray, then the power which streams through the Lord they themselves would have been able to partake of it, and that would have strengthened them. You gave the instance of twice. The first time he told them this, okay, they didn't do it. He had to come again. So he himself would have realized that, okay, a lot of, in his prayer, that means in the communication with the Almighty, so much was able to come to him. And it's only natural that those who were closest to him should have taken part by sort of absorbing the waves of power which has come through him, who is Lord to them, such that they themselves will be strengthened. Were it not so, Christ would not have called them to be on the alert.
Thank you for that, Gregory. In fact, I didn't read the next verse, which, believe it or not, Jesus went away a third time, and guess what? When he came back, they was again sleeping. So you just can't believe somebody like Jesus would say something to his disciples, and they wouldn't listen even a third time, and they were actually sleeping a third time. But I didn't want to sort of bring that up. I could have read that to the end, but I felt the point was more about what is temptation. So so you could see how deeply it affects even the disciples, and everybody's affected by temptation. And here, this was the case of the disciples, and it was not even, let's say, I mean, what you said, Gregory, this is an opportunity for them to receive, during Jesus praying, to get strength for themselves, and they missed out on that. And normally, when we're talking about temptation, we would consider, as you say, with evil intent, where somebody deliberately trying to set a trap, you could say, to catch us out. And here it was not even, let's say, Jesus' closest people falling for this. So yes, it really shows how much, deeply we need to look at it. So thank you for that. I wanted to say, let's see. So, Gregory, is it any way to, you've said how we're supposed to keep temptation like at bay by being watchful, but in a way, I've got another question, which is where I was wondering, why is there actually temptation? Because when we think of that, God, the Creator, is good, and He'd want us only to benefit. So how come there could be something called temptation? I hesitate to say this. Surely God will not introduce temptation Himself for us. So how can temptation come about? Yes, seems to be quite a difficult thing to think about that.
Very simply, one should realize that one is in the world of matter, or one is here on earth. The earth is a part of the world of matter, where there are many who are not as vigilant as they should be, or in their activities, they are unable to move themselves as they should. Their intuition, or due to indolence, due to the indolence of their spirits, or the indolence of their intellect, they are not mobile enough, which is a fault of theirs. For all they needed to do is to bestir themselves. However, in their everyday activities, they wish to have what others are really striving for without putting it the effort. There are many other things which the indolence of spirit has brought about. So instead of strengthening themselves, they have become weak, and all manner of evil have now come into existence. That which is good, instead of vigorous activity, they have now turned it into lazy activities. Such is a scenario, knowing fully well there are others who are doing the best they can, and there are other people who are not striving as they should. Such brings in jealousy. Jealousy arising from those people who are not, in quote, pulling their weights. When you have that scenario, then evil comes about. That is where you have stealing. That is where you start coveting that which does not belong to you. And at the same time, you make efforts to bring those people down who are striving to ennoble yourself, whilst you yourself do not want to ennoble yourself. So there are all sorts of scenarios which now come about because of these inequalities which has been brought about through man's activities. That being the case, it wasn't the Almighty that brought it about. It's the activity of man. The activities of man which have sprung from indolence. While some are striving to ensure that they listen to their intuition and follow it, the others spend their time, gallivanting, wasting their time on things which do not count. And on the long run, they now want to have those things which they themselves have not worked for. They now want to cheat. So with the indolence of the spirit, one can now see how many have placed themselves in very difficult scenarios. And with that, in all naturalness, as long as people live in the same neighborhood, they will strive to bring the others down. That is the evil which is being referred to. For if those people who have been so indolent, if they had struggled to make sure they are able to perceive correctly, then they themselves will know that trying to bring others down does not benefit them.
Thank you for that, Gregory. Again, you've thrown a lot more light on, how, let's say, the question was, how could temptation happen or begin? How could it happen? So you brought in, as you said, the indolence of the spirit and even the intellect, where we want to get something. I was going to say almost for nothing, but not for doing much, and you can see quite easily how that could lead to a lot of evil, activities, trying to, cut corners somehow. So yes, thank you for pointing that out. Dear listeners, you're listening to Blessed Radio. It's the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the grail message by Abrushin. And if you are interested in getting a copy of the grail message or want some more information, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that. www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And the topic we're discussing tonight is do not fall in temptation, which is a quote from Jesus in the Bible. And you're welcome to join us for any questions or comments. The number to contact us is our UK number 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044793968. 641-958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. Now, so Gregory, we've talked about, what is temptation, how it comes about, and, what exactly is temptation, the actual concept of it. Now, I want to bring up, following from what you just said in the previous question, how can temptation be there? In the news, a lot we hear, Gregory, people are, let's say, born or brought up in disadvantage or difficult circumstances, for example, in poor areas where there's high unemployment and crime, and the young people are tempted to go into crime as a way to move ahead, because, as I said, there's so much unemployment there. And it's like, there's just, let's say there's 25% unemployment, that's quite high, but there are some areas like that. And then, so in that situation, how can one not fall into temptation?
Such as you mentioned have to be understood correctly. One may look at the current situation in which we are all in which you are talking about the so-called COVID, where employment basically has stopped. Well, the question is, how many people have gone into all these nefarious activities? So one may not say that because one has found oneself in this particular scenario of COVID, and therefore there is one is disadvantaged, and therefore one has gone into these terrible activities. Before one even before you look at these things carefully, the question which each person must ask themselves: how come one has been born into such circumstances? Well, having been born into a particular circumstance, it only means that that particular personality must exert himself or herself to the utmost in order to refine those fine qualities that he or she has within. So the poverty of material things has nothing to do with the poverty of spiritual things. In the first instance, man is here on earth to improve himself spiritually. So whatever situation he is now placed in, or whatever situation he himself through his activities has placed himself, now or hereafter, that is such that it enables him to exert himself to fulfill certain challenges. That there are challenges does not mean one should cut corners and cheat. A typical example would be here in the case of, say, football, in which you're trying to score a goal, in which there are many obstacles. That calls for challenges that you now have to find a way in accordance with the rules of football to score a goal. So in life also, each person must reflect that there are challenges in the so-called rich and in the so-called poor areas. And being faced with these challenges, each personality must strive in such a way to be of benefit, to have a good volition, to learn patience and perseverance in accordance with the laws of creation or with the laws of nature through which he himself came into existence. With material things or lack of material things, that does not stop the individual from refining himself or herself. On the contrary, in such circumstances or in such scenario, a mere support given to, a support shown to your neighbor who, like you, is in such terrible scenario becomes very helpful. That particular human personality now learns what it means to be able to cooperate even at such dire circumstances. All right? To show good volition, to show understanding to one's neighbor. There, it is easier, all right, or it is simpler to be able to show goodwill to one's neighbor. Whereas in other cases where you have those people who in quotes, have so much materials at their disposal, you will find, as in many cases, they become they look down on others. They show no respect for others. So one should make it very clear to oneself that here on it, one has come to experience and one has come to refine himself or herself spiritually. The challenges that one is placed in enables one to build up oneself in accordance with the laws of nature through which he or she has come into existence.
Thank you again, Gregory, for that answer. It really shows the focus has to be wider than the earthly circumstances that we are, we or whoever is facing, we need to look at the bigger picture, which is the spiritual development of, every individual and humanity. So thank you for that, bringing that focus to that. I've now received a question from a listener. It's slightly different from what we've been talking so far. So I'll just read this question. Can temptation be linked to demons somehow? Okay, sorry, I'll read that again. Can temptation be linked to demons? Somehow like them testing if we still feed them and pushing us into fostering them. Do you think the demons have power to shape earthly events? So it's quite a number of points in there. So I'll just break it down. So can temptations be linked to demons somehow? Can we start with that, Gregory? Can temptation be linked to demons?
First, one needs to be clear what demons are. Demons have arisen through the intuitions of men. And these entities are able to influence those people, those personalities that brought them into activities. Therefore, these particular demons are able to affect those who brought them into activities and those who think or who behave or have similar tendencies, and those who also harbor a lot of fear. So you now have fearful energies attract these entities, whereas those people who are unfearful are unable to overcome these entities, and therefore they are of no consequence. These demons are not the creation of the Almighty, but they are the formations. Those who energize these demons are those who have fear within them, or those who harbor the wrong impression and have given rise to these demons. So are they able to tempt? They are able to influence those who are fearful, or those who have similar tendencies to what energizes these demons.
Thank you for that answer, Gregory. I just got a bit of a surprise when you said that demons are sort of a creation of human beings' intuitions, and so it's not, they don't exist themselves as an entity. They are created by us, and if you say they're created by us, what do they look like? I mean, do they have a life of their own? I'm a bit confused about this word, how you're expressing this word demons, or explaining the word demons.
The word one used, demons, these are entities which have come into existence through, again, the intuitive perceptions of men. They are able to exist as long as they receive continuous energies from those who brought them into existence, which demons were not there initially. And having been set into motion, some of them are able sometimes to receive energy, neutral energy, or envy energies to build up. One is only in this discussion giving hints. Much can be found in the work In the Light of Truth, the Grail message by Abrushin, in specific lectures like thought forms and a few other lectures. So one will direct many a listener to those lectures where a complete picture is given. But in discussions like this, one can only give tokens or hints.
Thank you for that, Gregory. And just one more point, my own question on that, not from the listener. So what you have said so far about demons sounds, they are, let's say, evil entities. Would I be correct? Because it doesn't seem to any. I mean, normally people think of demons as evil anyway, but is that right to consider that way, that they're just evil entities?
The content of an entity, the orientation of an entity born out of envy can only be envious and will influence those who are envious. Entities born out of goodness can only be good. But basically, furies, which many now know exist, are only born out of those who are furious, who do not reflect before acting, and causing so much confusion. Therefore, the question will be, what is that issues from the thoughts, from the intuitive thoughts of men? If it is good, in accordance with the laws of nature, then it is beneficial. Else, it is not beneficial.
Thank you for that. I will continue with the question from the listener now. I'll just repeat the beginning of it. It says, can temptation be linked to demons somehow, like them testing if we still feed them and pushing us into fostering them? So I think you were already answering something there. So can these demons, Gregory, uh, um, if push us, if we feed them, like you did say that if we continue to think about, those who are fearful, I remember you mentioned about, it's like, as you said, like attracts like. So basically, if you are fearful, then of course you'll be affected by fear, envy, fearful demons. So like attracts like we say, and then so that's a question I want to ask. I'm not very clear actually what the listener is trying to say here, and I'm trying to make sense of it. So let me just make sense. So if we still feed them, that is the demons, and push us into, they can push us into fostering them. Yeah. So yes, I think this
Well,
is like
one
maybe
thing,
I,
yeah.
I
What
think
I,
I know it.
what I
I
want
know
to
what.
stress there,
Sorry, you go ahead.
yeah.
Yeah.
Demons have no free will of their own.
Mm.
They have no free will as to decide, I am going to attack this person or attack that person. What is there is that those who gave rise to this, in all naturalness, must be connected with them, because it is they, these personalities, that feed them through their own thoughts and their own intuition. So there's that connection. And then those who are frightful, in the case of the evil demons we're discussing about, who are filled with fear, because they are filled with fear, then you find these energy forms rush towards those who are also filled with fear. Whereas that personality that is not fearful is able, you find there's no connection. In fact, there is a disconnection, so they have no consequence. And therefore, it means that only those who are fearful or those who are connected or have similar tendency, only those will be impacted. So it is that clear. There must be something homogeneous between those entities that have now come and have grown and sometimes have the face of those who first brought such entities into being. So you will find such terrible forms as cannot be mentioned. But like we stressed here, these discussions we keep having are only pointers to the center where all the answers will be found. So the best one can do is to point them to that particular direction, to that work in the light of truth, Grail Mercy, where those particular lectures have been discussed. But of course, one must prepare oneself gradually in order to get to those lectures. With that, everyone that is on quest, hence the questions, will have found their answers.
Thank you for that, Gregory. In fact, you have answered the last part of that question from the listener. So I don't think you need to add to this, but I'll just repeat what he says. Do you think that demons have the power to shape earthly events? And from what we have said, I would say, well, the demons do not have a life of their own. It's the human beings who give them the life. So if
Yeah,
that's
but again, one would say, of course, the demons have the power to shape earthly events.
right.
Very simply, looking at it very carefully, these demons influence the personalities. In reciprocity, influence the personalities and people who have similar tendencies. and people who are fearful. Now consider those people with similar tendencies being in the so-called positions of power, and people who are so fearful in the positions of power. And before anything, they act in such irrational way. And those who, in quotes, are in positions of power, who are either, say, head of states or whatever they care to call themselves, or head of religious bodies, whatever we care to call them, these people in turn now influence their followers. And this, so you now have a mass of influence along the line. These other personalities participate in the shaping of events here on earth.
Thank you for that, Gregory. I've received a couple of questions from two different listeners now. I think one of them is sort of relevant to follow on from the what you've just answered there. So I'm going to, just 1 second, I need to make sure I can see it. Okay, here we go. Yes. So this is from a new listener. The question is, if the human being can create evil entities, so can he create benevolent ones? That was the true intention of the human being, to bring peace and joy to earth by proper use of the divine power. So I'll repeat that, Gregory. The listener is asking, or I think it's even a comment, I think. No, it's a question. If the human being can create evil entities, so can he create benevolent ones? That was the true intention of the human being, to bring peace and joy to earth by the proper use of divine power.
Of course, that is the case. For those who are prone, or by their demeanor, wish to be helpful to whoever comes across their path, they themselves will make use of the neutral power which flows to creation and reaches unto them, to also form or create entities which are benevolent, which are also helpful. This is well known to very many who have tried it. For, strictly speaking, for many who have a very good volition, for many who are patient, for many who persevere, for all sorts of the good things that you can think about, such good behavior help to sort of create entities which are also beneficial and also helpful to others, that will bring benefit to all others who, like themselves, are struggling to understand the laws of creation through which they came into existence. It doesn't mean it has to be those with money or without money. It is just the human spirit, its capabilities, that is able to make use of the power that flows through it to create either benevolent entities or demonic entities.
Thank you for that, Gregory. Dear listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abdushin. And if you are interested in getting a copy of the Grail message or want to get some more information, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that. www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And the topic we're discussing tonight is do not fall in temptation, which is a quote from the Bible from Jesus. And you're very welcome to join us with any question or comments. You can contact us on our UK number, which is 07939 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. Gregory, I want to ask my own question first before I go to the listener's question, and this is following from earlier when I asked you about, people who are disadvantaged or coming from poor background with difficult circumstances, who are tempted into going, let's say where this says 25% unemployment, it's a temptation to go into crime and so on. And of course, you very clearly answered that we must look at not only yes, there's the material circumstances, but there is the spiritual one, and we cannot, use the material circumstances as a, get out of not following the example, the spiritual way we should follow. So I want to put another question on that, in that regard. I want to ask you, do we need good examples of like heroes or models, that to guide and to lead, let's say, the young generation? That's the main people I was thinking of when I asked that question earlier. For example, there's a musical artist called Stormzy in UK who's helping fellow young, talented, upcoming black people, because he himself is black and he feels want to benefit his fellow black people, and he's been giving funds for some, let's say, some university education in some cases to people like that. And even another person who was who wrote a book, and he helped them to publish this book. So is this a good way to encourage people to make progress and breakthrough? So yeah, Gregory, so do we need like some heroes or people to be an example to us, to guide us, Gregory, as a model for us to follow?
Such personalities had already been discussed, or the consideration of such personalities have been touched upon by the parable of the Good Samaritan, which applies everywhere. On the one hand, there is that particular example of the Samaritan of Stormzy, whatever. I'm not quite sure of the name now.
Yes, Stormzy.
Being able to help those people materially who really didn't have the resources, the material resources. That is a good way of doing it. However, with Stormzy doing that, he has expressed himself. The receiver of such goodwill must not make use of that goodwill and keep it to himself or herself. For whoever receives should make use of what they themselves have received and pass it on in one way or the other. The problem now becomes that many who do not have certain resources, having received a token of resources, make use of it, keep it for themselves, and do not pass it on one way or the other. Therein lies the failure that we find in society. It doesn't mean that we're talking about material resources alone. There are some who do not have material resources, but are able to advise their fellow human spirits who have challenges, which challenges may not be of a monetary kind, it could be of a health kind, in which a simple advice being passed on to another, to a neighbor, turns out to be very helpful. So when these things are viewed, one should not be one-sided. One should strive to see the holistic point of view rather than just looking at one side of it and say, okay, yes, I've received this, or I need models. Every person, the so-called lower classes, they are always asking for, oh, we need someone to act as a model. It is good. But ask yourself, why can't they themselves, through their activities, act as models?
Thank you so much for that, Gregory. Yes, for that answer. I'm now going to go to a question from a listener. The question the listener is asking, out of goodwill, people take actions that have earned them problems with the law. For example, someone goes out to protest a good cause and gets arrested. Has this person fallen in temptation out of his good will? So I'm going to repeat that question. Out of goodwill, people take actions that have earned them problems with the law. For example, someone goes out to protest a good cause and gets arrested. Has this person fallen in temptation out of his good will?
Well, that's a very pertinent question. Which one will give an example? Maybe the example may highlight what the key point here. Out of goodwill, the personification of divine will came into creation, incarnated in the person of Christ, to show men the right path. He had to go through the earthly challenges, and he spoke, showing them examples. Many did not like this. One would not say some. There were many who didn't like being shown and rebuked man to wake up from his indolence. What was the final answer? He was nailed to the cross. Even whilst on the cross, he also pleaded on behalf of men by saying, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Now, one may ask oneself the question, what does man expect? Do your best that you can do and leave the rest.
Thank you for so much for that answer, Gregory. I think you illustrated that very well, brilliantly, I will say, in response to that question. Now, I've actually received another question from the same listener now, which says, question asks, many ex-offenders turn out to be mentors and public speakers on crime. Society tends to learn more from their experiences. Why must we say their fall has been a beneficial experience when they did fall in the first place? I'm going to read that again, Gregory. Many ex-offenders turn out to be mentors and public speakers on crime. society tends to learn more from their experiences. Why must we say their fall has been a beneficial experience when they did fall in the first place?
It must be stressed that through their experiences having fallen, they have learned the necessary lesson, or the necessary lessons, and have come to see that their previous activities was of no personal benefit to them or to the benefit of their neighbor. And having reviewed it, hopefully, it has sunk into their soul, and they have come to realize that time and resources were being wasted, and have now turned round to ensure that they are able to speak to others, to ensure they don't fall in a similar pattern. Saul, who became Paul, went through that path.
Thank you for that answer again, Gregory. I'm just looking through my questions and seeing which one I could select for you now. I should be okay. I think, well, it's a question somebody sent in, but I will put it to you. It says, is it possible for one who doesn't believe in the Creator to not fall into temptation? It sounds strange. Question, is it possible for one who doesn't believe in the Creator to not fall into temptation?
For one who says he or she does not believe in the existence or in the Creator, such things only have arisen because of what they themselves have heard from others, but have not examined critically the events or the processes in nature or the objects in nature. Had they examined enough, they would have come to know that in the first case, there are in nature people like themselves, and that they came through someone, through their mother, who gave birth to them. If they had examined thoroughly, they themselves will come to know that there are features in nature which do not change. And these features is what they refer to as the laws of creation. And again, if they have examined a bit more, they would find that in nature, in which they themselves are a part of, there is continuous motion, constant motion, which constant motion is put in place because that power, or there is power that ensures it. And if they had questioned themselves deeply enough, then their intuitions will open. They will come to the conclusion that that power stems from somewhere. All they needed to do is to ask themselves further, where comes this power? Then their doubts will vanish. And because their doubts have vanished, those of evil volition will not put obstacles on their path or distract them from their path. For then they would have come to finer conclusion and sharper reasoning. Then they need fear no fall, for they themselves would have found the answers which elude many.
Thank you for that answer, Gregory. I think you've definitely addressed the first part of the question. Is it possible for someone who doesn't believe in the Creator not to fall into temptation? So you've dealt with the part about somebody who doesn't believe in the Creator, and you've obviously pointed out that they haven't really examined, their experiences, or what is life, you could say, questions about life. And then I guess, just to complete the question, Gregory says, is it possible for one who doesn't believe in the Creator not to fall into temptation? So is that second part? Can somebody who doesn't believe, can he not fall into temptation?
Well, if one says the person can fall into temptation, the question is how. If one says the person cannot fall into temptation, the question becomes the same how. Right. What one has stated are the basic things to know. You cannot go forward on a path in which you have to make so many decisions, and you do not know what has brought certain things to your particular path. Such it is that through your volitions, many things have come across your path. And the question which one is putting back to him or her who, in quotes, do not believe, how come all these experiences are coming your path? So the question is to prompt them, or to prompt whoever is listening, to ask themselves questions in such a way they are able to put themselves in the place of an ignorant personality, or in the place of a non-ignorant personality. In doing that, it becomes like an exercise in which you ask yourself, which temptation? Is there something of an evil intent? So one should not look at a question as something that exists by itself. One must look at all the scenario, what surrounds it. That is where one is pointing to, such that everyone is able to participate rather than accept whatever one has pointed at in this particular scenario. What one is stressing here is examine. Then you yourself will find out that which is beneficial. And then, because you are in the process of examination and you are drawing energy, means you are becoming vigilant. Being vigilant is like you are watching. You cannot then say, I do not believe in the processes, for you are vigilant to be able to identify those processes which are beneficial from processes which are not beneficial. And because you are being vigilant, you are watching and praying. That means those impressions that assail you, you are able to make use of them. Then such a personality becomes a knowing one. Knowing one because through their activities, you are able to recognize them. The idea or the concept of belief will gradually vanish. Belief or non-belief will vanish, and before long, through their experiences, they become knowing ones, they become convinced. That is where one is pointing at. That is not someone who says, I believe or I do not believe. Now is, have you had experiences? Or is there anyone on earth who is not experiencing?
Again, Greggy, thank you for looking at the question in that way, so that, pointing us, everyone, to look, there's no one who hasn't had an experience, as you said. So you really need to check, what am I saying? Have I checked myself, what I believe or think, or am I just, just spurting out some words? So it needs, and that is only, I don't want to say seeing is believing, but experiencing is your way of checking or testing that something works or doesn't work. And so then, you answer those questions yourself by checking it yourself. So thank you again for that. In fact, I've received another question while you've been talking, and it seems like you've answered it already, but I will say it to you. So this listener is asking, spiritual indolence, isn't that just a proof of having fallen into temptation? So I'll repeat the question there. Spiritual indolence, isn't that just the proof of having fallen into temptation?
To a large extent, by their activities, we shall know them, or by their lack of activities, they give proof of where they belong. And where they belong in this particular scenario is that of less experience, for they have not bestirred themselves enough to be able to have all this that they see, all this that they are able to experience with their five senses, all these cognitions, they have been unable to bring it to recognitions through their intuition.
Thank you for that, Gregory. Now I've got a question about temptation, really. When you think of temptation, you look at, let's say, the unhealthy food is what seems to be tempting, rather than healthy food, in terms of taste. You could say people like sweets, which are not very good for us. And then other things similarly tempting, let's say, sexual, let's say, excess, or, it somehow, there seem to be a temptation there. So all you could say, what I want to ask you, Gregory, is how come things which are not good for us seem to be more attractive than the things which are good for us? This is what, somehow the temptation seems to be more powerful. The negative things, I use the word negative in quotes. So let me say harmful things. Why are they more attractive than the beneficial things?
It is not difficult to understand that if a personality does not examine enough, or is too lazy to examine all that it comes across, then whatever has a semblance to that which is presented before it, it will accept. But the sooner as he starts examining thoroughly, examining not only physically with the frontal brain, but also through his intuition, then you'll find that he or she becomes alive. And being alive, many a thing that would have been slipped across to you, which would have caused a downfall, will vanish. You might be living in the den of thieves, but because you are on the alert, you put some things which is able to track movement around your place. You say a lot of things which would have brought you down, understanding the dynamics of these things. Because you haven't run away from it, you now know what to do so that it will not bring you down. So alertness and vigilance are key to survival.
Thank you again for that answer, Gregory. Really, highlights the theme of this show tonight, how to battle, and overcome temptation. So thank you for that. Dear listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abdrusheen. And if you're interested in getting a copy of the Grail message or want some more information, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that. www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And the topic of our show tonight is Do Not Fall in Temptation. You can join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us on our UK number, it is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text or use WhatsApp.
Hello?
Yes, Gregory, I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay, it's quite funny. On the screen, it tells me you're on mute, but actually I can hear you. So it's
Okay.
okay. So I can hear you loud and clear. Now, okay, I've got another question. Gregory, it says, does temptation exist in paradise?
The question is no. For in paradise, all the activities that takes place there is for the support, for the well-being, and for the happiness and joy of all. No evil can even be contemplated there in paradise. That is why it is called paradise. For where there is paradise, where there is joy and happiness, evil cannot take place. It is only in the world of matter where you have human spirit in the process of maturing that you have these excesses. But right there in paradise, evil is impossible.
Thank you for that. Just looking for some other sort of question I can refer you to now. So, how does the Lord help us through temptations? How does the Lord help us through temptations?
The question you mentioned, how does the Lord help us through temptation? Again, if one looks at the Lord's Prayer, where it was said, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Such it is that which the human spirit needs in order to overcome challenges, albeit spiritual challenges, are made available to it. All the human spirit needs is to reach out through watchfulness, to reach out through vigilance. Hence, we have this walk and pray. In doing that, one will not fall in temptation. It doesn't mean challenges will not come, but it's now saying when these challenges, which are imbued with evil, assail us, through our watchfulness and our prayerfulness, we will not fall.
Thank you for that, Gregory. I've now received a couple of questions from two listeners now. Just working out which one I should pick next. Okay, so this question: how come Adam and Eve were tempted by the snake in paradise as put in the Bible? So I'll repeat that, Gregory. How come Adam and Eve were tempted by the snake in paradise as put in the Bible? And Gregory, I think maybe when you listen to that story of the snake, or let's say the devil, offering apple to Eve from the tree of knowledge, if I remember that story, that's what it didn't look to me. Let's say, I mean, I know they were commanded by God, not by Adam and Eve, not to eat from this tree of apple. Tree of knowledge. Was it was that just simply disobedience to God that they were doing? So if you can tell us what that temptation was to Adam and Eve.
In the first instance, it was not in paradise. For, like we stressed, in paradise, evil does not exist. Therefore, there could have been no temptation there. On the contrary, here in the world of matter, in which the earth is a part of the world of matter, there we can have these challenges, the challenges of making a decision, decisions which have arisen in the course of time. Very quickly, one will refer you to the temptations which Christ went through. Before he came to the revelation of who he himself was, he was in the wilderness. And shortly, while he was reflecting, the tempter came to him and made some statements. If thou be the Son of the Almighty, command these stones to be turned into bread. Of course, the tempter knew that that is not possible. But at that moment, that gave Christ the spur to immediately to rebuke and say, look, this cannot be right. Because he himself knows the processes that to make bread, that all the things that the steps that need to be taken, and that stones cannot be turned into bread. That bread will have to come from flour. It could also mean that the tempter was referring to that the hard hearts of men can suddenly, immediately be changed into that which is noble. Christ himself knew that the processes in nature, the processes in creation, take place step by step and gradually, and therefore was not just expecting, just like a flash. In the case of Adam and Eve, which are allegories. Adam, it was told to him, you may make use of all this all at once, but of this particular tree, do not eat from there. Had he listened to the advice, or had he understood that particular advice, then he would not have carried it out. Again, showing that process of indolence, a thing which happened in this realm of the world of matter. For a spirit which is fully awake, like the examples we gave or you mentioned in the biblical example you took, when Christ said, told of his disciples, be awake, I am going to pray. They slept, and he said 3 times they slept. So had there not been that had Adam been exerting himself to be on the spirit, to be spiritually alert, then the tempter would not have come to him. But because he was not spiritually alert, to be able to differentiate that which will be beneficial from that which is not so beneficial, he fell for it. So in all these cases, spiritual alertness, spiritual vigilance is always the key. And that is what many should strive to take of it. It is not merely that one is at home and one is alive. There is the constant spiritual activity. The spirit does not sleep. The spirit should always be on the alert, processing all what it had experienced for the week, for the month, for the year, making use of these experiences such that it will use these cognitions that have been presented to it and come to a recognition in accordance with the laws of nature. Whenever that is discussed, whenever that one is referred to, because nature or creation is the reference which we all use, then temptation, which is imbued with that which is evil, will not be attracted to us.
Thank you again, Gregory, for this sort of comprehensive answer you've given there. I've got another question from another listener now. This is referring to when you talked earlier about the disciple Paul, who was called Saul before, and where we know that he was killing a lot of Christians, and then he was blinded, and the Lord spoke to him, asking him why he's doing that, and then he now saw the power of God, and he turned around to actually fight, for, let's say, Christ and Christ's message. So the question here from the listener, it says, like Paul, you mentioned a man who by some circumstances had been led through tribulations is given a torchlight to guide others coming behind him. Were these experiences by Paul, or of Paul I would say, of Paul, made mandatory for the sake of others coming behind him? So I'll repeat that question. Like Paul you mentioned, Paul the disciple that is, you mentioned a man who by some circumstances had been led through tribulations is given a torchlight to guide others coming behind him. Were these experiences by Paul or of Paul made mandatory for the sake of others coming behind him?
The experiences that Paul went through were such that he himself was open to make use of these experiences. There are many who go through similar experiences, yet reject the experiences or are unable to make use of them. Whatever assails you as a personality, like we stressed, you let those experiences sink into you through your personal intuition, where you will make use of them and see if they are in accord with the laws of creation or the laws of nature, through which
I think, Gregory, we somehow have lost your...
when you have
you're
gone...
back. Sorry, Gregory, just a few words of the last few words you were speaking, if you can just repeat them as well.
For one who has gone through experience, the first thing is to allow these experiences to sink in through one's intuition, through the spirit, where the spirit will weigh these experiences to find out if they are in accord with the laws of creation through which everyone came into existence. That being the case, you have assimilated, you have absorbed them. Now, having absorbed them, it is to further creation. You have to apply such experiences for the benefit of all that is around you, your fellow human spirit. Not only fellow human spirit, but also who made this earth possible, who made creation possible. For you yourself are not the only one. The human beings are not the only one. There are other forces which the human spirit haven't seen, or the human beings on earth haven't seen. Such it is that in making use of these experiences to the benefit of all, not to the benefit of yourself alone, you then fulfill the law that you yourself have received. You yourself have been granted that opportunity, just like Paul was granted the opportunity and has woken up through such an opportunity and have made use of it, and it has found, he himself has found it beneficial. Such an inductive way is what is expected of the human spirit, for that is what it needs. Firm good volition, patience, and perseverance. These are some of the qualities that the human spirit needs in order to fulfill its task in creation. But very sadly, many are tied only to the material things, and therefore the purpose of their existence on earth is null. They have not fulfilled. That means they themselves will have to come back in order to experience, if they are granted that opportunity. Again, the human spirit must know that to be able to be granted an opportunity is a grace. It's not just automatic. And the question is that who grants this opportunity, if not the love and the will of the Almighty, who through the activities allows the human spirit to come back, granting him the opportunity to grow in stature through the understanding of the will of the Almighty. So, life on earth, granted the opportunities, is for the benefit, not only for oneself, but for the benefit of all. The parables which Christ gave the Good Samaritan. His coming alone was a grace which was granted to the human spirits who were suffocating in spiritual darkness, for they didn't know the path to follow. These are the things which must be taken into consideration. Above all, one must stress and continually stress that this work in the light of truth, the grail message, is such a grace that grants an opportunity for many to wake up, make use of it for their own benefit, and see how they themselves can become brighter in spirit.
Thank you again, Gregory, for your answer there. I've got another question from the same listener. I think it's like you could say a follow-on from what you've just said. So this is asking, it's difficult to say this question. Can do not fall in temptation therefore mean to bear struggles but not to forego the aim of reaching your goal? So can, which is the title tonight, can do not fall in temptation therefore mean to bear struggles but not to forego the aim of reaching your goal?
Yes, it could mean that if your goal is spiritual ennoblement, then that statement is correct.
Thank you for that, Gregory. I'm now going to take this opportunity for the last part of the program, the end of the program, to read from the Grail message, just the first page of the lecture, which is the title of the topic for tonight, Do Not Fall in Temptation. So, dear listeners, I'm reading from the Grail message now. There's a lecture called Do Not Fall in Temptation, which is the first page of the lecture. Watch and pray that you do not fall in temptation. Up till now, men have regarded this warning from the light as nothing but kindly advice given by the Son of God, Jesus. In view of the weak nature falsely imputed to the Son of God, as a consequence of mankind's pronounced conceit. Today, I must repeat this warning, but it is more than advice alone, for it is God's demand to you, men, if you want to save yourselves from the poisonous fruits of your wrong opinions and conceptions. Do not imagine that God will now simply lift you out of the loathsome swamp which keeps clinging to you with great tenacity, with the same tenacity as you applied in forming such a swamp through your rigid stubbornness against the will of God. God does not lift you out of it through gratitude that you at last show some signs of being willing. Oh no, you must work yourselves out of it, just as you allowed yourselves to sink into it. You must exert yourselves. Exert yourselves honestly with great diligence, so as to be able to come up again onto healthy ground. Only when you do this will you be given the strength you need, but always and only in the same measure as your volition. this is inexorably demanded by the justice which lies in God. And therein lies the help which is promised you. The help you will receive in the very moment when your inner volition has at last become deed, not before. To help you achieve this, however, the Word has been brought to you as a gift from God. The Word which shows in all clearness the path you must follow if you wish to save yourselves. In the Word lies the grace which God gives in His incomprehensible love, as has already happened once through Jesus. I'm going to stop there. So, dear listeners, I just read to you from the lecture in the Grail message called Do Not Fall in Temptation, which has been the topic for tonight's discussion. And I hope our words, Gregory, answering the questions and me asking them and the listeners also contributing with their questions has helped to enlighten everybody in, what is this temptation and how we fall in it, and hear the words in the Grail message, which also give guidance and bring, I will say, complete clarity and answers, to those questions, spiritual questions that we are striving to answer. So I exhort everybody to examine the Grail message for yourself, so you don't have to take our word for it. You can examine it by yourself, and you can, if you are interested in picking up the Grail message or getting some information, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that, www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. So, Gregory, I would like to ask you if there's anything you'd like to say to the listeners to say goodbye for tonight.
Well, wishing every listener all the strength in making further inquiries.
Thank you for that. Dear listeners, thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the show and found it enlightening. As usual, we'll be back next week, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. on Tuesday with another topic. Hope you can join us then. And I wish you all a great week. God bless. Take care, everybody. All the best.